My name's Beth Bully, and I'm the new Freedom to Speak Up Guardian for the Trust, and I took over the post from Denise in June this year. And thank you so much for the time this morning just to talk a little bit about the role. So I'm a nurse by background, and I've been a nurse for 12 years in oncology for my whole career. I've been part of CUH for 8.5 years, and the 3 years prior to being the Speaking Up Guardian, I was senior sister in the Trust. So aware of a lot of the pressures that people are facing. And really the thing that drove me into applying for this post was my two priorities have always been patient safety and supporting staff and enabling staff to feel able to speak up about anything that concerns them or anything that might impact on the well-being of patients. So for anyone who doesn't know, just a little background on Freedom to Speak Up Guardian. The role was created by Sir Robert Francis when he did the inquiry into the Mid Staffordshire Hospital scandal, and found out that there was a dreadful culture there where people were so afraid to speak up about anything that was going wrong. Staff were fearful to speak up. Those who did suffered bullying and harassment, and their concerns weren't acted upon. So as part of the reports from the inquiry, Robert Francis recommended that every trust had a Freedom to Speak Up Guardian. So my role is to be independent and impartial, and I'm a safe person for people to raise concerns directly with. And my job really is to ensure that staff concerns are heard and acted upon, and to ensure that staff aren't treated differently if they do speak up. And I think in an ideal world, we would want speaking up to be business as usual, and for my post not to exist, that every member of staff felt that they could speak up freely to their line managers or senior managers. But we know that that still doesn't happen, and that's right across the NHS. This isn't just CUH. And there's many, many reasons why people don't feel able to speak up. And people do still have that fear of being treated differently or being seen as being a troublemaker if they do speak up. So we know that, and a large part of my job and what we're trying to do in the Trust is sort of trying to overcome those barriers and focus and really work out what the blockages are for people. And speaking up is inextricably linked to the Trust values, and it's actually there as part of the SAFE value with raising concerns specifically named. And we talk an awful lot about speaking up, and we put the emphasis on the individual to speak up. And we know that our staff are here 24/7, and they are the eyes and the ears of the Trust, and they see everything that's happening. And they are such important people. But for this year's Speaking Up Month theme from the National Guardian's Office, the theme this year is Speak Up, Listen Up, Follow Up. And I want to just try and shift the focus a little bit and some thoughts on this. So when staff do speak up, do we really listen? So whoever they speak up to, do we listen to what they're actually saying? Do we want to hear about the things that might be difficult to address? And is this something that we genuinely feel? And then do we really follow up? So what do we do with the information that's been given to us? And often that information is really difficult to hear, and it's very challenging, and situations can be very challenging. But what do we do with the information that's been given to us? And do we try to change things and look into the issue? And then finally, do we feed back to those who have spoken up? Because people often say to me that, you know, they may have spoken up in the past, but then they don't hear anything about what's happened after that. So they feel a bit lost that nothing's happening. So we know that a barrier to a really good open speaking up culture is futility, and that when you do speak up, nothing happens and nothing changes. And I just want us all to just have a little think about how this really makes staff feel. So you get your courage up. It takes a lot of courage to speak up, to raise a concern, and you take that step and you say, I'm going to do something about this. But then if you don't feel like anything changes or that anyone listens to you, how does that make you feel? And we're talking so much, aren't we, about how we value our staff and how we demonstrate to staff that we really value them. And I just think this is something that we need to bear in mind, that when people do sort of raise a concern, how do we make them feel when they do that? So just following on from that. So coming back to the idea that it is hard to hear difficult things. And I know as a manager that you have so many competing pressures and priorities, and actually I've been in that situation where staff have come to me with something and you think, I just don't know what to do with this is so difficult, it's so tricky to manage. And what do we do then? How do we sort of empower our managers and our leaders to then kind of take this forward so that we can act on things together? And something just occurred to me last week as I was put my nurse head back on, and just thinking that if you're in a ward situation, you've got a patient who suddenly becomes very, very poorly and they start to deteriorate rapidly, what do we do? And we don't say, oh, it's a really difficult situation, we're not going to do anything. We ask for people to come and help. We ask for the people who have the knowledge and the expertise and the skills to come and help us to deal with that situation, however hard it is. And I kind of see it that way with speaking up, that you're not alone. So if somebody brings something to you as a manager or as a leader or just as a colleague, you're not alone in trying to deal with this. There are lots and lots of people who can help to sort this out. And there are brilliant people all over the trust with the knowledge and the expertise to do this. So I kind of see my role as well as being a person that people can come to if something's been brought to them and they don't know what to do with this next. They can bring this to me and I can help sort of find that path through. So in the same situation as, if someone becomes very sick on the wards, what would happen if we did nothing? I think the same way when people raise concerns to us, what will happen if we do nothing? And I don't have an answer to that because every situation is differently. But I just think for Speaking Up Month and really to focus on this in October for all of us and beyond is just to think about when people speak up, what happens if we do nothing? What happens to the patients who are affected, the staff who are affected, and how does that make staff feel? And I'd just like us all to sort of consider the speaking up theme again, which is speak up, listen up, follow up, and do we actually do those things?